Greg has had a wealth of experience with the Resource Center as an advisor, as a consultant, attended many, many board meetings, and we thought Greg would be the one to really give us the heart and soul of this man, other than his business endeavors. Greg?
Thanks, Sam. I also think I'm here for affirmative action purposes as well. So, thanks.
You're welcome. Don't let it happen again.
You and me, Meryl. Okay. Joe was born in the United States and at age 2 moved to Italy. And at age 18 returned back to the United States. Shortly after that, he comes into the area, and he receives a draft notice from Italy. Benito Mussolini would like to have Joe come back and join him in the Italian army. At the same time, he got greetings from the United States government. Now here's a guy with a little bit of a conflict at this point. So he decided to join the U.S. Army in June of 1942. He rose to be a mess sergeant and was in the unit of the 66th Infantry. However, what was of real interest, and maybe some of you, if you know it, bear with me, it bears repeating. On Christmas Eve, 1944, Joe was on the ship known as the Leopoldville. To head towards Cherbourg to bring the troops to the Battle of the Bulge, as I recall. Right, Joe?
Right.
And en route, the boat was torpedoed by a German submarine. And in fact, the whole event subsequently became part of a book entitled One Night Before Christmas. I'm going to read a little bit now because this is, it's really telling about the character of Joe Caprino. It's what happened on that particular Christmas Eve in 1944. Joe, again, mess sergeant, he says, as he was preparing to embark on the cross-channel trip, these are quotes, I recall we even had our turkeys ready for Christmas dinner when the order came and we had to leave quite a bit of food behind. Joe was on the second level of Leopoldville, and he was resting in an upper hammock and had his rifle and helmet attached to the ceiling. It's okay if I go over 3 minutes?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. When the torpedo hit, the force of the impact dropped Joe's helmet and rifle onto his face. I've been hit, was his first recollection. He had facial lacerations. Joe then managed to put on a life jacket and made his way to the upper deck. You can just imagine he's up at the upper deck, and it's the Leopoldville was a ship, Belgians, right?
Right.
And the Belgians said, don't worry, because they were being hired to transport the Americans across the channel to go to the Battle of the Bulge. Belgians said, don't worry. Though we've been hit, the ship, there'll be smaller boats coming, we're going to get off, no problem. Well, what happened, those smaller boats came, and who left? The Belgians. They nicely just said, see you guys, we're leaving, we're bolting. So these hired Belgians left, and there were the Americans left on the ship, the Leopoldville, which was sinking, to fend for themselves. Nobody knew how to run the ship. So the next logical thing to do, and Joe recounts in this article, that as the ship was going down, everybody jumped into the channel. So there's Joe Caprino going into the English Channel, the cold waters of the English Channel.
Don't even want to swim.
That's right. And he went on to say, as the ship was going down, I was in the water, and I'd never swam in my life. But I learned fast that night, he said. He said he was fully clothed with a heavy overcoat and a canteen. As I was praying all the time and seemed to gain courage, all of a sudden a life raft came by with a duffel bag on it. My hands were too cold for me to be able to grab the raft enough to get on board, but I did manage to hang on to a rope. As I looked around, I could see the lights of Cherbourg in the distance, and also a short while later saw a spotlight from one of the ships which was picking up survivors. I kept hollering for help, and eventually the small boat came close to me. One of the sailors threw me a rope and attempted to haul me on board. He was unable to do so, and I slipped back into the water. He called to a shipmate who helped him bring me onto the deck. They couldn't even get his jacket off. It was so heavy and so tight that they finally take a knife and cut it off. One of the guys who was in the ships out picking folks out of the channel was a guy named Wesley McIntarfer. At this point, I was going to stop, and Wesley McIntarfer, who was a longtime pharmacist up in the Dunkirk, Fredonia area, right, was part of that and part of this article. Wesley, I was going to introduce him at this very moment. And Wesley wanted to be here tonight because he heard about it. He called me specifically to say, I want to be there. Only last Monday did he broke his hip and unfortunately could not come, but he sends his greetings because he too wanted to share this special moment with you, Joe. Joe got off, was rescued, went over to Cherbourg, and one of the first things he did when he got ready was to look on a prisoner of war list to see if he could find his brother. This is a whole different story, and I'll stop soon.
All right.
His brother, Pete, who was in the Italian war, he was in the Italian army with Mussolini. So Joe, his first thought was when he gets over there is to try to look at a prisoner of war list to see if in fact he could find you. That's a giving guy. I got to tell you, that is really very impressive. This story, I'm sorry to take your time, but as I was read it and was able to recite it, it tells me a lot about the character of Joe Caprino. And as I reflect back, I really do thank God for the rescuers that night in December of 1944, who saved you, Joe, so that you could leave a legacy not only to your family and friends, but for everybody for years to come. And that being the legacy, that legacy of love that we're here tonight. And Joe, I just want to thank you for everything you've done for a whole lot of people, including me, and this is a special night. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe, when he talks about his military service, he commonly refers to the fact that he was on the winning side. He went down with the ship, and his brother Pete gets a pension from the Italian government.